the Inanis Praedicators can trace their history back to the terrifying times around the Year of the Ghosts. The High Lords of Terra ordered a chapter founded from the gene legacy of the Silver Skulls, the line of Guilliman. Thadru Hookno, the Void Herald, was appointed as the chapter's first Lord Commander. Hookno was known for his superstitions, near ritualistic talking into the void about his prognosticator's divinations, and it is from this practice the chapter's High Gothic name derives. The nascent chapter and those founded alongside them were founded to replace the 11 chapters that plunged the Segmentum Pacificus into anarchy and were declared traitoris perdita during the War of the False Primarch. Their Genator Magus was ordered to select only the most stable gene stock to prevent the events that led to that 8-decade-long war from ever occurring again. How many chapters were founded alongside the Praedicators is unclear, as a great many records were purged during that time or have been lost within the labyrinth of the Administratum. A majority of the chapters from this founding follow the strict organizational and tactical guidelines of the Codex Astartes. Like most of the approximately 1,000 chapters in existence, the Praedicators follow the doctrines of the Codex to an extent, but are also known for occasionally deviating from some of the less stringent requirements. Thadru Hookno started the Praedicators upon a path that has earned them a cold reputation throughout the Imperium for over 7,000 years now. Since their inception, they have become known for holding a bleak and fatalistic view of the mankind, stemming from the strange and terrible knowledge that they burden. The inheritors of Hookno's visions fight to deny the inevitable, bemoaning the high price they have to pay for such meager gains as can be won in the wars against the enemies of the Imperium, but they fight on because that is what they were created to do. It started within a few years of their founding, as brothers with no prior signs of psychic ability began experiencing vivid hallucinogenic dreams. The apothecaries now suspect that this was due to the slow mutation of their catalepsian node, a dark flaw in the chapter's gene seed that they were at first reluctant to discuss with even their fellow Astartes. These dreams were glimpses into a horrifying future and eerily mirrored the more worrying divinations the chapter's physically attuned prognosticators were beginning to scry. As the dreams progressed in severity, they eventually had no choice but to reach out, first to the Adeptus Mechanicus and their Genator Magus, and then to the Ultramarines, the first founding chapter, whose Primarch Rebuta Guilliman was the primogenitor of the Silver Skulls chapter, who in turn are the Praedicators' forebearers. At every step, have their emissaries turned away, cursed for being too frightening to be believed. Other servants of the Imperium seemed unable to see the truth staring back at them from beyond the stars, and how pointless mankind is in this universe, and how the Imperium is the center of nothing. The confession of their genetic mutation only brought the Imperium's scrutiny down onto the Praedicators, and with it, inquisitorial investigation, along with the immediate presumption of guilt that entails. Faced with such levels of paranoia and suspicion, the Praedicators have now learned to stay quiet until one day they may perceive someone who is genuinely ready to heed their warnings. Charged with heretical thinking and deviation from the Imperial Creed, the chapter was sentenced to purgatory along the Imperium's isolated southern border. Their presence might still be of some use to the Imperium, and the High Lords of Terra carefully chose the location of their penitent exile to repair the power and reach of the Adeptus Astartes until they could once again call themselves true scions of Guilliman in thought and deed. Being haunted by unimaginable visions and nightmares has profoundly altered their tale to this day. Unlike their fellow descendants of Guilliman, the Praedicators never once aspired to take the pilgrimage to the shrine of the Primarch before his unprophesied return. Nor have they made obeisance to him in person since, for their visions have made them pariahs, and they are still shunned by the Astartes whose gene seed they bear. Settling into their duty of protecting the periphery of the Segmentum Tempestus from Xena's incursions, an expeditionary fleet led by the Praedicators was tasked with mapping some essential yet unknown areas of the Veiled region. Without the survey, the limited levels of navigation possible in this region would have continued to make it both difficult and dangerous to travel through. The Veiled region is known for being unstable at best, with perennial nebulae interfering with communication, not to mention the exceptional levels of psionic radiation, which often leave vessels to drift for days, unable to re-enter the tumultuous immaterium. Amongst the most significant dangers is its isolation from the astropathic communication, for psychic communication is reflected and echoed with only silence being returned. It was only due to the fleet's exceptionally skilled navigators that the exploration was even allowed, and their heroic efforts certainly explain why it was successful. The fleet could not traverse the frequently encountered breaking points of reality, pervasive nebulae, and vast stellar clouds without them. In this seemingly unknown and forgotten area of space, the expeditionary fleet came upon what they had been told did not exist: human settlements. Under Imperial law, they were prohibited, but the populations the fleet encountered seemed to survive and even thrive despite the separation from the light of the Astronomicon. What was more striking was the seemingly steady flow of vessels that came and went, bringing supplies and much-needed trade, despite the numerous Imperial edicts which they were breaking to do so. It seemed that all manner of vessels would frequently traverse through this region of space. Merchants, miners, scavengers, prison ships, ships belonging to Darkholds, and even the occasional rogue trader's personal flagship and attendant flotilla. Without these many visitors, the far-flung human settlements would be isolated from one another and left unprotected. The Imperium functions on the premise that most core worlds do not need to be self-sufficient, instead focusing on the manufacture or production of a few essential goods or resources, which are then supplemented with basic goods from off-world. Without a steady stream of starships plying their way through the Veiled region, interstellar trade could not exist, and the weapons and other supplies needed to stop each world from falling into darkness would not be obtained. Space travel beyond the boundaries of the Imperium is arduous and dangerous, with spacefarers relying on their ancient vessels' powerful engines, flinging them into the immaterium, a black art poorly understood by the adepts of the Mechanicus in the 41st millennium. Once ships have entered warp space, they can cover thousands of light years within a relatively short time, dropping back into the materium far beyond their starting points. With its constant turbulence and treacherous warp storms, the warp ever seeks to drag helpless vessels to their doom. To travel any distance at all through the warp is dangerous, impressive, and not attempted lightly. To travel between the distant worlds of the Veiled region demanded a particular kind of dedication, madness, or disregard for the safety of those on board. The alternative, traveling through real space without warp engines, brings its own hazards and challenges. And yet, here were worlds visited by privateers and merchant princes, arriving via every means and from all far-flung corners of the galaxy. Those aboard spacefaring vessels in the 41st millennium are not merely star travelers, but the products of many generations passed in the darkness between worlds. These are the Voidborn. They are relatively few among the teeming multitudes of humanity, but singular and form a disparate and odd collection of misfits, strangers, and other ill-omened folks birthed in the bellies of vessels that spend entire standard centuries charting a course through the stars. On the worlds the Voidborn come to, they are often shunned for their ethereal quality and considered unlucky, ill-fated bringers of bad fortune, secretive and untrustworthy. Most Imperial citizens and no small number of fringe dwellers believe the Voidborn in some way to have been touched by the warp, where gravitational variance, radiation exposure, genetic distortion and chaotic anomalies slowly take their toll. Ashore they carry a strange air about them, a perceptible something that makes others uneasy. The plight of the Voidborn was seen by the Praedicators as one mirroring their own. They too were homeless and ostracized without just cause. Empathy overcame Hookner's soul. The Voidborn, too, were somehow associated with the many unfathomable dangers of the outer darkness. Their being inured to the warp convinced the Lord Commander that they could serve as the source of recruitment for the aspirants who might safeguard the future of the Praedicators. Without a homeworld of their own, the chapter otherwise risked a slow dwindling through combat losses and the decline into old age that claims even the Astartes after many centuries. Having determined how they could sustain their chapter, the Praedicators now settled into patrolling the periphery of the vastly unknown Veiled region. This was ever a dangerous calling, with small groups of ships navigating amongst dense nebulae and newborn stars, suffering from waves of radiation cast off by discarded stellar matter, while being cloaked from any hope of reinforcements or communication by swathes of stellar dust. All the while patrolling along the galactic south of the Segmentum Tempestus, from which come the raiders and despoilers of the foul Zenus. The Void Heralds learned to deal with these conditions, or they died. The survivors became responsible for the surrounding areas of space, chief among them the Ainu system, the Namu stars, and the Hypnis expanse. apothecaries and the chaplains of the Praedicators recruit aspirants for the chapter exclusively from the vast, city-sized spacecraft that ply the depths of the void. In that way, they follow the edicts of Lord Commander Hookno to ensure that the chapter recruits only the most mentally capable and genetically suitable candidates. Recruitment is slow and arduous, with no centralized pool of potential candidates to draw from, and no way of knowing when the next suitable aspirant will be found within the innumerable shoals of void-faring vessels. Chaplains must work within the labyrinthine political webs woven amongst the thousands of ships' crew, often becoming embroiled in complex networks of feuds, alliances, and unpleasant little wars, all while taking care not to disrupt the carefully balanced system. Removing the wrong crew member as a potential aspirant can potentially hamper the Voidborn population's ability to maintain itself and properly crew a ship, depriving the chapter of a valuable source of future recruits. Brought to their Ramos-class starfort, Fortress Ministry, Cetus, to be inducted into the Praedicators, the Voidborn aspirants will step out to breathe its unique ecosystem. Some fall into a catatonic, worshipful state when they see its grandeur. These failed aspirants are led away to serve the chapter in other ways. Those who can take in the sight of Cetus without being overcome gradually learn that large portions of the vessel are used to emulate different combat environments for training purposes. At the same time, entire swathes of space are given to meditation. The extraordinary chambers and vaults are often decorated with tapestries depicting the terrifying nightmares they are to expect, but most numerous of all are the seemingly endless barren halls. It is here that neophytes will undergo the long process of psycho-indoctrination, submitting to grueling biological and genetic testing before being implanted with a gene seed that will sustain them through a lifetime of nightmares, turning their meager bodies into killing machines, recreating the Voidborn as a void herald. A once humble and frail recruit becomes the epitome of humanity, the perfect warrior and servant of the Imperium. Following the same reading and understanding of Roboute Guilliman's Codex Astartes as their predecessors, the Silver Skulls, the Predicators stay close to the Sacred Tome's central tenets. This has protected the chapter from any further suspicion and scrutiny from the Inquisition. The inevitability of all they know becoming enveloped in darkness never leaves their thoughts, but war is their purpose. It is what the heralds were created for, and it is their last source of pride and satisfaction. The tactical orthodoxy is dictated to a degree by the fact that they are a fleet-based chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, some would say the truest bearers of the name Space Marines. Their limited numbers ensure the chapter is not used as a blunt instrument, but instead to deliver precise and lethal strikes in a manner that could never be achieved by the faceless masses of the Astra Militarum. Millennia of repeated combat indoctrination has shaped them into the force they are today. Efficiency in war is their only antidote for bemoaning the cost of taking something that achieves nothing and being unable to stop the creeping darkness. After successfully breaching an enemy ship's hull or making planetfall on a new world, the Predicators make the most of their precognitive psychic abilities by deploying as a predominantly defensive force. Their tech marines and commanding officers orchestrate fire bases that use skilled marksmen and overlapping fields of fire to suppress oncoming attackers. Assault forces held in reserve wait for the opportune moment to disrupt their attackers further with well-executed raids, attacking seemingly from all sides at once. These attacks have the dual goal of causing considerable damage and sowing confusion among the enemy ranks. Predicators bemoan the cost of war, so their reasoning goes, so too will those who try to defy them. The only death the Predicators fear is the slow death through madness, which is the fate of so many Voidborn. It is why they give no quarter and expect none in return. As with their predecessors, it is not unknown to hear of the Predicators displaying an unwillingness to go to another's aid. After all, no one is willing to come to theirs, and sometimes the divinations simply show the cost to be too severe. It is perhaps a single fact which explains why they have survived for so long, and yet have so few allies even amongst their Astartes genekin. Some opponents mistake thinking the defensively minded Predicators are an inert force, slow to rouse and lacking in agility. Such thinking brings the enemies of mankind only woe. When the chapter begrudgingly determines that they have to take ground, they will seek to overwhelm their foes so mightily that they may maintain offensive momentum at all costs. nor are their assaults rash and underprepared, preferring to engage directly after a carefully orchestrated orbital bombardment from their vast fleet assets. Waves of drop pod infantry and light equipment arrive with impeccable timing alongside Thunderhawk deployed vehicles and other heavy assets. Chapter scouts will most often be required to gather vital intelligence, a mission demanding they face the foe under a considerable range of dangerous circumstances. This hard-won knowledge is used to confirm or expand on the information gained from the prognosticators' divinations. Scouts are further used in the disruption of enemy supply lines through sabotage and demolition actions to eliminate critical targets with crippling campaigns of assassination missions and preemptive strikes. Their collective actions are often mistaken for bravery and courage. In truth, the Praedicators stand before the enemies of the Imperium unflinchingly, as they consider themselves worthless. It is only thanks to the chaplains that walk among them in the heat of battle, reminding them of their purpose, their sole responsibility, that they continue to fight. Without solid leadership, they might otherwise lapse into dark thoughts, the want to die, the want to despair, and the want to return to nothing. An outside observer would find it difficult to spot any differences between the Praedicators and a chapter rigidly adhering to the tenets of the Codex, such as the Ultramarines. Praedicators have been considered a near-Codex Astartes adherent chapter for much of their history, although the nature of a fleet-based chapter does require some flexibility in this regard, with isolated fleet elements being forced to adapt their tactics to the resources available to them. Additionally, the Praedicators fight predominantly without direct Imperial support due to their ill-omened reputation, instilling in them a sense of self-reliance and common in many Codex-style chapters which are more comfortably meshed in the greater Imperial war machine. It is in the organization of the higher levels that deviations from the Codex Astartes can be seen. All chapters include a number of officers and specialists who stand aside from the company organization. In the Praedicators, the chapter master is referred to as Lord Commander, as was the way of their predecessors, the Silver Skulls. The librarians, known as prognosticators, share the mantle of spiritual advisors alongside their brother chaplains. These psychically attuned warriors are the seers of the chapter, scrying for divination of the future. Wherever their visions take them, they grant the squads and companies they are attached to an undeniable edge for the coming battles. The chapter relies on a large network of support staff, and highly ranked members include the Master of the Fleet and the Senior Captains, the Keeper of the Arsenal, the Abyssal Watcher, and the Warden of the Watch. Although each captain is a Space Marine, there are actually relatively few brethren in the chapter's support staff, and most non-combatant roles are performed by the chapter's human serfs. The chapter includes a large amount of support staff, many of whom are non-combatants of advanced age, tasked with the day-to-day administration of the chapter. The largest group of Praedicator Space Marines in the support staff are the chapter's armorers and tech marines, who are aided in their task by hundreds of monotask servitors. The 10 companies follow the structure laid down within the Codex, with the first company being made up of the most experienced veterans among the chapter's ranks. Their wisdom is invaluable, and so they are attached to the battle companies to share their knowledge, deployed in small units and essentially armed in a similar manner to a tactical squad, though admittedly with their enhanced scopes and specialized ammunition. Only the most experienced of the veterans will be permitted to wear the few suits of Terminator armor available to the chapter. Unless the need for their presence on the battlefield is dire, these suits can be seen watching over you as you enter the Forge of Cetus. Praedicator Tech Marines have gone to extensive lengths to recover fallen suits of Terminator armor so that they may once more see battle. The 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th companies are organized along Codex lines as battle companies. Each consists of 6 battle line squads, 2 close support squads, and 2 fire support squads. These 4 companies and their fleets form the main battle line and generally bear the brunt of the fighting, whether planetside or in the void. Each has a degree of autonomy, and with such a variety of squads, the companies are highly flexible and tactically adaptable. Companies 6 and 7 are reserve companies, each consisting of 10 battle line squads. These act as reserves that may be used to bolster the front line, launch diversionary attacks, or stem enemy flanking maneuvers. With such low recruitment rates, these are rarely ever at full strength. The 7th company is barely seen at all, and some say it exists now in name only. The 8th company consists of 10 close support squads. This highly mobile company is often equipped with jump packs and is fielded in the assault role wherever a strong hand-to-hand fighting force is needed to storm an enemy strongpoint. The Praedicators' Ninth Company follows the doctrines laid out in the Codex, unlike their progenitors, the Silver Skulls, who designate their Ninth Company as a siege company. In the Praedicators, this company consists of 10 fire support squads. It is the most powerfully equipped in the chapter and is used to bolster defense and provide long-range support. The 10th Company consists of a number of scout squads, youths who have been recruited and partially transformed into Space Marines. There is no formal size of the company, as the rate of recruitment is not fixed. They are the only company to not maintain its own fleet and instead operate directly from Cetus. Never fighting as one coherent force, they are instead assigned throughout the other fleets, where they can gain experience alongside their elders. All of the companies, with the exception of the Scout Company, maintain transport and drop pods for each of their squads and officers. The armory holds onto rarer equipment more centrally, including heavy vehicles such as land raiders, with each of these relic war machines being allocated to individual squads as dictated by the needs of their mission or when requested by a captain in the midst of a campaign. Haunted by their dreams and seen as secretive, the ill-omened Praedicators are Voidborn and know the unfathomable dangers of the outer darkness. Just as they did before wearing the mantle of Astartes, they continue to carry a strange air about them, a perceptible yet undefinable something that makes even the bravest of warriors from other Astartes chapters uneasy around them. The heralds know firsthand the horrors of space and the sheer multitude of the Emperor's enemies. This knowledge forces these voidfarers plying the dark space between the stars while holding deeper darkness within to insulate their brotherhood from that they are duty-bound to protect. Thus they live a life of reunification, rejecting what they know is always lurking in the void beyond the hull. From deep within the librarium, the minds of the prognosticators look far out into the cold vastness of space, seeing further than any of their less gifted brothers' dream visions. Their sight will pierce the encroaching black veil for only a second, there to witness a short eternity of endless shrieking, immemorial lunacy from realms whose existence stuns the brain. They rarely speak of the eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order that numbs them with their gulfs that it throws open before their frenzied eyes and scorched mind. They have uncovered the abyss beneath their illusory sense of connection with mankind. It is their gift and their burden. What all brothers see is a senseless, mechanical, and uncaring universe. Mankind dissolves into meaninglessness when impermanence is the only real thing. They have tried for so long to look away and to wake from these terrible dreams, but with no understanding, their minds are pulled and stretched further. The strain is too much for some. Staring deep into the void for so long, it now only stares back as a contradicting reflection of what they have become. Reclusive, withdrawn, taciturn, denizens of the deep. No ordinary Predicator will be remembered, for all legacies will be burnt, but the stars will live on. To recount tales of mankind's history and achievements only delays the inevitable entropic devouring of every shred of memory, every artifact, and every settled world. The most solemn of courses is that of the apothecarian. Their paradoxical role is to prepare for a future that does not appear to exist. The millennia of screeching divinations and torturous dreams have left the Predicators with only a cold, senseless taste of hopelessness. Their actions cannot be compared to the fate that awaits us all. It will all be dust. Humanity's time has come, no longer belonging in the only place they have ever known. That tenet disturbs the ecclesiarchy because it denies the existence of their God Emperor and all that he opposes and all that he supportedly defends us against. It puts the Predicators at odds with the Adeptus Mechanicus and particularly challenges the Tech Marines within their ranks who have sworn ancient pacts with the Omnissiah. To find a follower of the Imperial cult not openly hostile to what they consider such blasphemy seems impossible. And should the Predicators sow the thoughts into the mind of one receptive to their message, that would be the darkest day indeed. The Predicators reject the concept of the God Emperor because to perpetuate such an idea of a deity that can save us from the unsavable only serves to deny that we are alone and hopeless in the grandest of schemes. The realization of the inevitable fate that belongs to us all is creeping into our galaxy, like the tendrilled void stalker of the warp approaching their prey. Aside from perhaps he who now sits on the golden throne, mankind could never fathom, fully understand, or explain fate, but it is nearly upon them all. the Praedicators believe that it will become known as a blessed release once every citizen of the Imperium realizes that their fate is no longer in anyone's hands. The Praedicators have no particular hatred of Xenos races, though they will gladly extinguish them if given a chance. Though all Xenos are dangerous to mankind, they are considered neither good nor evil. The greatest of the other species are merely incomprehensible cosmic forces that notions of morality have no significance to. They exist in astral realms beyond our understanding and cannot serve as a bulwark against the darkness, but may hasten its encroachment by their mere existence. By this simple logic, they must die if mankind clings on a bit longer in this uncaring galaxy. While the Death Watch and Ordo Xenos modus operandi is considered narrow and flawed, individual Praedicators to be assigned to a watch station or fortress is celebrated, as the destruction of the inhuman is seen as one of the last remaining noble causes in the galaxy. In the darkest millennium, it needlessly stands out with towering majesty to give hope to those that have none. Prognosticators are hybrid officers fulfilling the role of librarian alongside tasks more traditionally assigned to the chaplaincy in other chapters. While the Praedicators' chaplains play a more prominent role in recruiting and training of new aspirants, the Prognosticators guide and shepherd the veteran brethren, administering to the psionic and mental well-being of the chapter's warriors. These dour warriors are the seers of the chapter, reading their brothers' dreams or scrying for divination of the future, granting the squads and companies they are attached to an edge for the coming battle. The chapter takes the reading seriously, so much so that on some occasions the Prognosticators have successfully counseled against the chapter becoming embroiled in a particular war. This can prove problematic as it heaps greater suspicion upon an already mistrusted chapter. At times, this balancing act has even led to companies taking part in conflicts they know will end in defeat. Upon a Prognosticator's armor, pendants and badges of office can be found chthonic marks and runes engraved into the surface. These are not purely decorative, as they serve to channel and concentrate the Prognosticator's psychic powers. Given their role as wards of the psionic and spiritual health of the Praedicators, it is a rare thing indeed for a Prognosticator to take the Apocryphon Oath and serve a vigil of the Long Watch with the Death Watch, the chamber militant of the Ordo Xenos. In accepting the Prognosticators into his watch fortress, a watch commander gains the services of an individual of unique skill and ability, whose knowledge of both the librarian's arts and the duties of the chaplaincy are, of course, valuable. Yet the greatest of the Prognosticators can extend their ministrations to all of the battle brothers they serve alongside, inspiring each and every one of them to epic deeds of courage, diverting the flow of history so that these warriors can return to their chapters as heroes. It is said that it is only by the actions of those few Prognosticators who have taken the oath that the Praedicators have gained any reputation as trustworthy allies whatsoever. The most solemn of individuals are tasked with the most solemn of tasks. It is their role to mind the physical well-being of their battle brothers. Not all injuries, however, can be detected with an arthesium scan. A medic from any other chapter might be oblivious to the emotional damage that eats away at the Praedicators. However, a Voidborn apothecary knows only too well the torment that his brothers endure, for they too are emotionally scarred from their nightmares. Those amongst the Praedicators with an affinity for technology are dispatched to Mars, honoring ancient pacts formed with the Adeptus Mechanicus millennia ago upon their founding. There they are initiated into the Martian tech cults to become tech marines. This process divides the brothers' duality complex into a triality nightmare, but it is acknowledged and necessary. Without tech marines, the Praedicators would be left unable to tend to the machine spirits, observe the rites that ensure continued operation of their war gear, repair damage taken on the field of battle, or attend to the needs of the fleet. After their training on Mars, they return even more mysterious and capricious, aloof and distant. Their mysterious ways are not easily understood by most of the battle brothers. Many do not understand themselves, lost in doubt, dwelling on the idea that if even the great machine god may not be eternal, then their newfound faith cannot be real. Predicator tech marines struggle for their entire lives to unravel their three competing ideologies: the Liber Mechanicus and the Omnissiah, the chapter's sacred duty and its nihilistic creed. Eternity becomes their supreme desire, fearing that nothing is actual that is not eternal. The Prognosticators that discern their dreams tell only vague impressions of a sleep adult mind, but they all tell the same story. It is no ordinary nightmare. There is a prison deep below the surface, and something that stands a mile high, but moves like flesh and blood. A rustle of wings and a set of claws. How small the tech marines stand beside those claws. They feel him beneath the sand. They see his dreams, so they are consumed by another fear of being believed absolutely. Yet, they cling to their visions, for they sometimes reveal the location of priceless relics and STC files waiting to be found. In the end, the fear and the doubt is all incidental, inevitable, and something to be borne stoically at all costs. The descendants of the line of Guilliman through the legacy of the Silver Skulls bore gene seed renowned for its stability, so it was upon the founding of the Praedicators, though some may whisper that the legacy of enduring wholeness died with the First Lord Commander's genekin. Whether the gene seed is now considered pure or aberrant, it is true that its incorporation only exacerbates the distinguishing features of the typical Voidborn recruit. Drawn features, pallid skin, and characteristically haughty air. Not long after the chapter's founding, the catalepsia node in many aspirants began to exhibit signs of a peculiar mutation. Operationally, it still controls marine circadian rhythms and responses to any kind of sleep deprivation, allowing them to stay awake at full effectiveness for days at a time. Unusually, they often prefer to do so, for when they sleep, they are consumed with potent, disturbing and dark dreams, overwhelming them with dread. Prognosticators scry these dreams to glean slight hints of the future, whose own dreams travel out much further, giving them all cold black dancing in their eyes. The apothecaries do what they can to ease the burden of such nightmares. Those who find them all too much and are slowly driven insane are led away in pentagrammically warded chains to a chamber deep in the bowels of Cetus, where they will mutter nonsensically for their eternity about what placid island of ignorance we live in among black seas of infinity. Prognosticators study their cryptic words and piece together the dissociated details of knowledge revealed therein, opening up terrifying vistas of reality and learning of our frightful position therein. Despite being ostracized and cast out as pariahs, ultimately, as with most chapters, the Praedicators received envoys of the Primarch. They were universally met with mistrust, although the reasons were different in each case. The first wave brought mistrust and suspicion down upon themselves with their oft-repeated claims that the Praedicators' Primarch Rebooter Guilliman had returned. This event seemingly was not envisaged by the chapter's prognosticators. Then came the Rubicon Primaris, the extensive operation that allows firstborn Space Marines to be reborn as Primaris Marines. It was renounced because of the chapter cult itself. How futile has their existence been if they need to be replaced? Could these new symbols of resurgent hope ever truly understand that the ending is nigh? With time, those Primaris who have experienced the same nightmares in their sleep-addled brains as any firstborn battle brothers have grown to be accepted and even well received. However, lingering doubts remain as to whether any of them could fall into madness, and what does it say of them that they cannot fully embrace what it is to know of the void. At present, the chapter's cult has been reluctant to embrace the Primaris as equals fully. The chaplains, prognosticators, and apothecaries of the Primaris are, if anything, made even less welcome than their ordinary brothers, as they are seen as lacking the ability to empathize with the firstborn when it comes to the mental torture they risk with every sleep cycle. Time will tell whether the Primaris become full and true denizens of the deep, or whether they will be left to wither away and be forgotten quietly. That said, some fear the Primaris for another reason entirely. Namely, they represent the fulfillment of a long-held belief that the end of days is nigh. Indeed, enough has happened to make some within the chapter believe the end is coming far sooner than they had previously gleaned. And with Primarchs returning and Custodes abroad once more, perhaps in time the Primaris will be seen not as unwelcome outsiders, but the fulfillment of a prophecy scried 10 millennia ago. Even with complete gene seed implantation, one final stage must occur before an aspirant can be called a Predicator. He must be clad in the distinctive sea green armor. The enclosing suits worn by all Space Marines are made from thick ceramite plates that would be cumbersome but for electrically motivated fiber bundles that replicate the wearer's movements and supplement his strength. The last gene seed organ to be implanted in a Space Marine, the black carapace, rests beneath the skin, itself fitted with neural sensors and transfusion ports. These plug-in points mesh with Space Marine armor, linking the wearer's nervous system to his suit's mind impulse controls and turning the suit into a second skin that moves with all the speed and precision of the Battle Brother's own body. Without a carapace, Space Marine armor is almost impossible to use, and it is, therefore, the most distinctive feature of a Battle Brother and the true mark of the Adeptus Astartes. There are several marks of power armor with significantly differing appearances. Having existed as a chapter since the 33rd millennium, the Praedicators have collected many older marks of armor, all of which have been maintained by skilled artificers who are not Space Marines, but servants who spend their lives working for the chapter. Comparatively, you will usually find other chapters reserve the right to wear these ancient suits of armor that have been lavishly restored to the ceremonial guards or elite units. The Praedicators, on the other hand, do not. And it is common to see Praedicators wear a multitude of older types of armor and suits composed of many different marks of armor.